Are you chasing a feeling? Are you chasing a result? See, I think the world in the flesh, okay, when you're in flesh, you chase feelings. You don't like the way you feel, so you're going to try and figure out how to change that by chasing something that will make you feel differently. We chase feelings instead of results. The feeling will come if you get the right result. All right, so today we are in Slavery to Freedom, Freeing Your Mind, Part 9. All right, Part 9. Okay, so we've been using this framework of the first Exodus, and especially in chapter 6, the idea of him saying, I will bring you out from under your burdens, I'm going to deliver you from your enslaving, I'm going to redeem you, and I'm going to take you as my people. And we often talk about that during Passover time as the reference to the 4 cups that are used during the Passover meal, right? So I'm going to just do a quick review here. Everybody's told me that they've enjoyed that's been helpful to kind of reset the mind here. So we started off with, I'm going to bring you out from under the burdens. In other words, he was going to open your bubble to the possibility of a way of escape and cause you to seek it. Now, let's remember that all of these things that are happening, we have to change our mindset here. All these things that are happening are him making you aware of a possibility or opportunity that you then can choose. Not must choose, you're not being forced to choose, but that you can choose. This is important, okay? It's not something that just automatically gets done for you, but he's going to make you aware of something. That's a possibility. So he's going to open, that's what that bubble popping thing that I talk about is. He opens up your mind to the possibility of a way of escape. And then, because he would irritate you with this information, it would cause you to maybe want to ask, seek, and knock and look for it. Because you know there's something's wrong, something's not right, something's missing, and you're then saying, I need to scratch this itch somehow, right? Then he says, I shall deliver you from your enslaving, so he's going to cause you to seek the cause of the enslaving, because the way to get delivered out of the enslaving is to recognize the cause of it. Now, of course, when they were physical slaves in Egypt, they knew what the cause was. We're physical slaves in Egypt. But now, we are enslaved by our own willful compliance. We have chosen to be slaves, and we could choose to be free. We have to understand how that process works. So we have things like Ephesians 4, which says you should no longer walk as the Gentiles walk in the futility of your mind, which means you had to come to realize that certain things you were doing were futile. You had thought they were going to get some sort of result that they were never going to get. There were certain things you were doing according to the way you thought and perceived things that just ended up being futility. Then we also have the Philippians 2, which says, let this mind, this attitude, this nature of Yeshua be in you. All right, so we have that as part of the process. Then he says, I shall redeem you. So Yahweh causes us to be aware of the redemption, reconciliation provided by Yeshua and why we need it. Why do we need it? Well, because we were walking in the futility of our minds and serving that which was not Elohim. This made us his enemies. We were acting in ways that were at enmity, that we were acting like enemies. And we need it because we were dead in our trespasses, doing the desires of the flesh and of the mind and of its thoughts. Literally, those are the words that he uses in the verses we read, okay? That we were doing the desires of the flesh and of the mind and its thoughts. And so most of what we've been doing in this last, 8 weeks of this teaching is helping us to understand this idea of freeing your mind. It's all dealing with your mind and your thoughts and the enslaving that you may have because of that. Then in his compassion and graciousness, he delivered and saved you from that state by showing you a way out, the way out that brings life. He did not just wave his magic hand and now you're in a different state. I want you to understand, very importantly, actually, you know what, I'm going to say this now because it's going to come up in the teaching, but I wrote it for later. This is one of the things I added. We talked about this last night, and actually, if you watch the Torah study, you'll see that. But what we're going to see is, I'm going to be reading out of Leviticus 26 today quite a little bit, and we did that also as part of the Torah portion last night. And this idea of being performative. In other words, he's expecting you to perform, to do. But as I go through the rest of this, keep this in the back of your mind. Keep it in the front of your mind, okay? performance under duress, being made to perform. That's slavery. Performance under duress, being forced to do, okay, is slavery. Performance by choice is freedom. He wants performance by choice. He doesn't want performance by duress. Now, he does tell you straight out, by the way, if you perform this way, this is what's going to happen. And if you perform this way, this is what's going to happen. We're going to cover that quite a bit today, okay? But just kind of keep that there, all right? Because it's the desires of the flesh and the mind and its thoughts that lead to one of those choices, okay? That leads to one of those choices. All right, now, your servants are the one you obey, whether sin to death or obedience to righteousness. Romans 7 told us that there was more than one law inside that Paul could see, one that was hostile against the Almighty, one that was in line with, okay? There was the law of the mind, okay, and which is that brings battling. I see a law in my members that battling against the law of my mind, bringing me into captivity to the law of sin. So the law of his mind, he's saying, is I have already had my bubble popped. I have a thought now that there's freedom that I could get to, but the law of sin and death, my flesh, is trying to enslave the law of my mind. Okay? Now, I'm going to throw this out there now. I was going to say this a lot later, but I kind of think this really is important. Are you chasing a feeling? Are you chasing a result? See, I think the world in the flesh, okay, when you're in flesh, you chase feelings. You don't like the way you feel, so you're going to try and figure out how to change that by chasing something that will make you feel differently. We chase feelings instead of results. The feeling will come if you get the right result. But instead, we chase a feeling. This is where the difference is between motivation and discipline. Motivation is you're generating an emotion or a feeling to drive you. Discipline is a result that's driving you that you're going to go after, and then you'll feel good about it later. Okay? The main reason you don't have a lot of things that you want in life is because you're too busy chasing things you want right now. Okay? I'm sitting at home. I get home from work. I'm just using anybody as an example, not speaking necessarily just of myself. Anybody, right? You come home from work. You're tired. You've had a long day. A bunch of whatever junk happened during your work day. And your thought was, I like to eat and go to the gym. Or just go to the gym and come home and eat, whatever it is. But you don't feel like it. So you're going to choose to do something that will change your feeling. I'm tired, so I want to do something that makes me feel better being tired. Or I had a rough day, so I want to feel better. And so we chase a feeling instead of saying, no, I want a result. Which, by the way, you will feel better when you chase the result, okay? And this is, by the way, the same problem that we have very much in the Messianic Torah observant part of the movement. And this drives me a little bit crazy when I tried to watch a few things this morning from different places that I'm aware of that have services on Saturday that they stream, and they're all chasing feelings. They all are there trying to stir up all this emotion. And I've had people leave here saying that they came out of, more charismatic aspects of Christianity, and they just don't feel the stuff here that they felt over there. Well, you're not going to. Because we're not here chasing a feeling. We're here striving towards a result. Okay? You're here because of obedience, because you've chosen obedience, and you're looking for a result. But if you're looking for a feeling, go to there. They're very happy to stir you up in a feeling, make you feel good, make you forget about your troubles. Okay? Abba wants to see you choose to do the things you need to choose to do regardless of how you feel about it. I don't mean how you feel about the thing, but how you feel about it at the moment. I don't feel like doing that. Okay, a lot of you didn't maybe feel like coming here today. Some of you came, some of you are online watching right now. Some of you didn't feel like coming last night. Some of you don't feel like doing this. Some of you don't feel like doing that. You know, when you're giving in to feeling, you're slaves to flesh. Your flesh is all wrapped up in how it feels, okay? It's your flesh that's all wrapped up in how it feels. Now, so then we go into him saying that he saw this battling going on. What was the battle going on? I know what I should do. I don't feel like doing it. You see? That's the battle inside of you. I know, right, the mind, the law of the mind, which is his mind being in you. This is Paul using his same phrase like he said in Philippians 2:5. He's saying this in Romans, okay? That this thing in my mind is losing sometimes in the battle against the law of sin, which is my flesh that wants to do other things. And why do we want to do other things? Is it because you think the other things are right, or is it because of how it will make you feel? Okay? I don't think it's because you think it's right versus him being right. I think it's because it's how it's going to make you feel. It's what I want to do. We're told you desire and don't have, which is why you have problems. He talks about that in terms of people fighting with each other. But you have an emotion that you desire something. There's an emotion, but you don't have it, creating a different emotion. I want it, one emotion. I don't have it, different emotion. Both of them causing you trouble. Okay? And this is where you're not free, because you're still emotion-driven. You're slaves to your emotions. Okay? Well, I've got all this anxiety, slave to your emotion. I've got all this depression, slave to your emotion. Because you're either slave to an emotion about something that's already happened, or slave to an emotion about something that might happen later in the future. Right? Anxiety is about stuff that hasn't happened yet, and depression is about things that have already happened. Are you enslaved to your emotions? He wants to set you free. See, that's not what the church is teaching. The church is teaching about being free. I don't know what they're talking about. I don't think they know what they're talking about. Free from what? Okay? Well, you're free from being a slave to sin. How? Because nothing's sin anymore. They took away the law. There isn't anything that's sin anymore. Except the things they personally think are sin, like murdering somebody or raping or something. Everybody might agree that that's wrong. So now it's more like culturally, socially agreed to things that are wrong, as opposed to just because the Creator said so, okay? So they'll still think stealing is wrong. You know, whichever commandments that fit into their cultural, how they feel about it. I feel it's wrong. They don't feel it makes a difference what you eat. They don't feel it's different what day you keep. I don't feel why that's a big deal. Am I making any sense here? Where the struggle is? All right? And we're still in the kind of the reset here. All right? So then he talks about being double-minded. Double-minded is not really double-minded unless you're going to consider the emotions or the heart as being a different mind. I think we're going to use the mind of Yeshua. I'm trying to align myself here, but then my flesh. So I have a mind of the flesh and a mind, we'll call it of the spirit. My thinking that aligns vertically, let this mind be in you, we're going to call that spirit. The part here, we're going to call that flesh. Okay? Not that all emotions are flesh. I'm saying the drive to please this is flesh. Okay? Now, so we're told that double-minded people are unstable. Well, sure, because which one's going to win? Sometimes this one wins, sometimes this one wins. That makes you unstable. All right? At least a fleshly person who doesn't have this battle is stable. The flesh always wins, and you can kind of know what to expect from them. They're going to kind of be the same way as you would expect. But you who want to act in a Yeshua-like way sometimes and a fleshly way another time, you're not very stable. Okay? Then he says, I shall redeem you. So we talk about this fighting and strivings that come from our pleasures that battle in our members. And we just talked about that, right? We desire and don't have. Okay? In Colossians, it says that that he wished that you would be filled with the knowledge of his desire in all wisdom and spiritual understanding. In other words, he wants you to be up here thinking, not feeling about what he wants. And what you're thinking about is his desire. What pleases him, not what pleases you. But it's important that you're not doing this under duress. You want to please him. Do you understand? He doesn't want you to do it just because it pleases him and make you do it. He wants you to want to do it because it pleases him. And he wants to bless you for doing that. Now, so we're to walk worthily of the master, pleasing all. And what he means there is like doing all that is pleasing to him. Okay? So rewording that, to walk worthily of the master, doing all things that are pleasing to the master, bearing fruit in every good work. You have to understand this is performative. We're going to read a bunch of stuff today that's going to show it's performative. He's expecting you to perform if you want the result that he's offering you. Okay? Which means that you have to do things worthy of what he's offering you. That's verse 10 of Colossians 1. He says, being empowered with all power according to the might with which you esteem him. In other words, how much do you esteem him? Okay? Let's see. The Father gave and gives us what we need to be made fit. So he gives you with all the tools that you need. You have all that. And that this process you must accept and believe, or this isn't going to work. You have to understand this process delivers us from the authority of darkness, emotion-driven, flesh-driven darkness, and transfers us into logic, thinking, pleasing him, mind, into the reign of his Son. Okay? Now, then he gets to where we are today. Okay? So we're going to start here now for today. It says, I shall take you as my people. I'm going to take you as my people, and I shall be your Elohim. Pay attention. This is conditional. Okay? If you're listening to this on a Sunday, coming from a preacher on a Sunday, they're never going to tell you that. It is conditional. By conditional, I don't mean that, well, you had to make an altar call and now you're in. No, it's conditional until you die. It's not a permanent state. It's conditional. I will accept you as my people, and we're going to see verses where after accepting them as his people, he kicks them out. Because they did not continue in the agreed to performative place. They were not doing what was expected. Okay? The condition is if you. Okay, this is all conditional on if you. If. If you don't, then we have that too. You have freedom of choice. He wants you to do it because you freely choose. Let's please keep that in mind. Okay, you have freedom of choice. Now, that being said, let's begin in Exodus 19. All right? Now, when it says in chapter 6, I will take you as my people, I want you to understand, he's not going to just accept us. He's going to show us the path, requirements, and expectations to be his people and for us to demonstrate that he is our Elohim. Okay? Because he says, I will take you as my people and I shall be your Elohim. Well, he's going to show us what it takes to be his people and what it takes to demonstrate that we have accepted him as our Elohim. It's not words. It's performance. Okay? It's behavioral. It's character development. So it's not performative like a show. It's performative based on you being that person. You need to be someone you are my people. And he will describe to us what that looks like. And it's really simple. Okay, well, at least the concept of it's simple. It's right here in chapter 19, and we're going to begin here in verse 3. Moshe went up to Elohim, and Yahweh called to him from the mountain, saying, this is what you are to say to the house of Jacob and declare to the children of Israel. So Moses, this is what you're going to tell everybody. He says, you have seen what I did to the Mitzrites and how I brought you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Can anybody in this room not claim that he's done something like that to you? Anybody really struggling with that? Has he not in some way done something where you've seen what he's done and how he's brought you to himself? Okay? So this kind of plays out as a type and shadow for us, okay? He says, and now Now that you've seen all this, so you know, what is he saying in verse 4? He's saying, you know who I am and what I'm capable of and the amazing and miraculous things that I can do. I've demonstrated to you who I am, all right? By the way, we'll take this a little aside just so I can get some people mad at me. Men and ladies, this is picturing, not literally, it's picturing like a marriage. And he's proposing to Israel as a bride. All right, this is kind of like a marriage proposal. But notice how he starts off. He's saying, I want to be your husband, and I want you to know I want to do that knowing that you know what you're getting. Ladies, why would you marry someone you don't know what you're getting? Okay? I don't get that. I also don't get why these things keep curling up. Okay? I don't know why you would do that, because men, you should be able to say to that lady, hey, I would love to take care of you. I would like to take you as my wife. Like he says, take you as my people. And you have seen, because you know what I've done in my life, what you're getting. Okay? Not that you would have done so much for her at that point, because you're not married yet or whatever, but you should have something to lay out there. You know? I can't tell you, I almost would tell the ladies you should look for them to give you a financial statement before you get married. I don't know how many ladies come to me, I didn't know he was broke, and I didn't know he didn't have anything, and he didn't have any insurance, and he didn't, why don't you know these things? You know? You should know these things. And guys, don't get mad at me, because you're thinking, well, if they knew that, they'd never marry me. Well, why should they then? Why aren't you going out there to become that? Okay, so that somebody should be desiring somebody like you, because you can take care of them and provide for them. Okay? Anyway, so watch what he says here. He says, you know who this is, and he says, and now that you know who I am, if you diligently trust me and obey my voice, okay? Because why would you obey his voice? You don't trust him. Remember, this is voluntary submission, voluntary performance, right? This is not under duress. He says, if you would trust me to obey me. In other words, trust is not in the verse, but it's implied. Okay? If you would trust me and diligently obey my voice and guard my covenant, then you shall be my treasured possession above all the peoples, for all the earth is mine. And you shall be to me a reign of priests and a set-apart nation. And those are the words you're going to speak to children of Israel. Now, so notice what he says here. If you diligently obey, if you do this and guard my covenant, what's that mean? It means that when we make a marriage covenant, you're going to guard it. You're not going to breach the contract. You're not going to go after other mighty ones. That includes just doing whatever you want that goes against what he said. You already contracted to obey his voice, which means your voice doesn't get to win out over his voice. By the way, he doesn't stick his little voice, nose, or whatever in your business and every little thing you do. He gives you tremendous amounts of freedom to do and be. As a matter of fact, you've heard me say this about husbands for wives. I know you've heard this. The man should be providing an environment for the wife to flourish and grow into all she could be, while she's still trusting and submitting to his authority when he might say no, or we're not going to do that right now. Okay? But generally, he should be saying, yes, that will help you to grow and flourish, and I want to provide that to you. So it's not about some anal control thing. Okay, the Creator doesn't want to control everything you do. As a matter of fact, almost everything that I can think of that he says to do benefits us, not him. Okay? Keeping Shabbat does not do anything for him. It does a lot for us. That day of rest, the time to put aside and not care about the cares of the world. I mean, it does tremendous things for us. Look throughout history and see what eating kosher has done for people that didn't end up with plagues while the rest of the world was dying because they were eating pig and were getting trichinosis and other problems, okay? I mean, there are tremendous benefits. Some of you may have an issue with tithing. I can point out a dozen, 20, 30 people just in this room that could tell you their finances are infinitely better once they understood tithing. And they were able to then fix their finances so that they could tithe, which also fix their finances so everything's better. But do you trust him? Do you understand that what he says and what he's asking you to do is really for you? It doesn't do anything for him except give him a people he can trust. Why should he give you forever if he can't trust you? So that's why he says, if you diligently obey and guard this relationship covenant we're making. If you don't know what a covenant is, go listen to Are You Covenanted? I know it's like 55 parts. One of the most important things you can listen to, though, you need to understand what covenant is, because that is literally the relationship he wants with you. It's called a covenant. A lot of people says, well, he married them. Well, yes and no. He made a covenant with them. Marriage is a type of covenant. But this one is very specific with its expectations. And I lay out the definition and verse by verse by verse for 55 hours plus of teaching to help you see every verse that really helps you to understand what covenant is from his expectations. All right? And he talks a lot about, in the first 5 books here, specifically from Exodus to Deuteronomy, about the idea of guarding his covenant. Now, of course, you see that in the prophets as well. You see it in the writings as well. He says, we're going to make a relationship. I expect you to do certain things, obey and trust my voice, and I expect you to keep and guard this covenant. Do your part that you're agreeing to, okay? Now, so as slaves in Mitzrayim, I think I covered this preemptively, but we'll put it again. As slaves in Mitzrayim, we were expected to obey the voice of the slave masters without choice. This is slavery, all right? To serve without choice, we are slaves to the flesh. Pleasing a wrong authority, chasing, seeking an emotion, all right? That's how you can be slaves to flesh. You desire. Okay, do you give in to the desire? Some of you say, well, I really didn't want to do it. Well, then you were a slave. You did it by duress. Something caused you, forced you, made you do something. Your desire. That's why desire is not necessarily a good thing. If you desire something good, then it's good. If you desire something wrong, then it's bad. Desire is just an emotion driver. Desire in itself is neutral. It could be good or bad, depending on what you desire, right? That's why we're told to figure out what he desires and try to align with that. And then to desire what he desires, right? So when we serve the flesh, we are pleasing a wrong authority, usually chasing and seeking a feeling. Okay, the flesh is all about I like, I don't like, I want. It's all feelings. I don't like it because it doesn't make me feel good. I like it because it makes me feel good. I like it because I enjoy it. I don't like it because I don't enjoy it. Again, a feeling, okay? It is what it is. Because there are things that I could tell you that are totally neutral to do as far as Torah observance that some of you would like doing, some of you would not like doing. So the difference is your preferences, okay? I could say, let's say I like climbing mountains and going hiking all over the place, and you might hate that idea. Climbing mountains is neutral. In other words, it's not good or bad, but you may like it, you may not like it. So it's preferences, right? And so we end up in trouble, though, when our preference clashes with something that he said was his preference. He prefers you show up on Shabbat. You might prefer to go to a sporting event or a concert or shopping or something on Shabbat, a wedding, a funeral, something else that you may prefer to do. And he says, well, but I prefer that you're with me. Now, that's your choice, though. All right? It's your choice. Now, Yahweh expects those who will be his people to obey his voice by choice. Okay, this is freedom. To serve by choice, remember, you're a slave to whom you serve. So you're still a slave. To serve by choice, we are slaves to the Spirit. What do I mean by the Spirit? Okay, the mind of Messiah, the nature of Messiah, pleasing Yahweh, seeking the result of the kingdom relationship. So remember, we compared spirit versus flesh. We did that for weeks, right? Over the last couple of weeks, we definitely compared spirit and flesh. Spirit is his nature, his mind, his way of doing things, and you are to choose to be slaves to that. In other words, submit to that authority, okay? And if you do, you're pleasing Yahweh. When you're submitting to and slaves to flesh, you're pleasing you. Or maybe somebody not you. Maybe you're pleasing a parent, a family member, or friend, or somebody, some other authority. Okay? So when you're pleasing spirit, you're seeking the result of the kingdom. Well done, good and trustworthy servant. Okay? You're not seeking a feeling. I promise you, you will feel great when you get to hear those words. But you're not seeking the feeling now. Because I talk to people on a regular enough basis who will tell me, I just don't feel anything, I don't feel him. I don't feel, well, what is it that you're looking for? Okay? Do you know, generally speaking, I don't think my children are feeling my awareness of them now that they're adults. I trained them, I put them in this world to, and gave them some skills, and they're out there doing whatever they're doing, and I'm either pleased or not pleased. It doesn't really matter. They're not here to please me. But the thing is, that's not the relationship. I did my part. I prepared them and set them out there to now live life. That's what the Creator did with you. He gives you the guidance to help you demonstrate whether or not you should deserve or be worthy of more than just this finite 100 years or whatever it is that we all get, right? Whatever 70 to 100 that most people end up with, are you worthy of more? That's what he's looking at. He's not looking to have this emotional, whatever relationship with you guys. You're like, oh, we're so close, me and... He doesn't have any of that going on necessarily. That's something the church taught you to seek after, and it's an emotional, roller coaster ride, but it's not the relationship. I keep trying to tell you, you're not seeing him right. I love my daughter. She's up here, you guys get to see her and everything, but I don't get involved in every little thing she's doing because I need her to live life, and I want to watch and see the choices she makes. She does come to me every now and then just to say, hey, I was doing this or that, what do you think of that? And that's how we kind of pray sometimes when you go to the Father about things. But it's you can't have that same relationship with someone you can't see or touch that you can with someone you can see and touch. So we're trying to take what is not flesh and make it flesh. We want to feel about him like we feel about someone in the flesh. And we'll try to figure out a way to generate that. But you really can't. I mean, you could try to convince me that you have, and I don't know how you did that or whatever, but it's not the same thing. I got in so much trouble one year, many, many years ago, like maybe 30 years ago almost. I said in front of a big group of people that I don't feel the same way about him as I feel about my wife. People are like, I said, well, she's right here. I can go over and hold her. I can sit down and face-to-face have a conversation with her. That doesn't mean I don't love him. I just don't love him in the same way. Okay? With him, it's not as emotional. With her, there's emotions that are always stirred because there's an attraction, there's a relationship. She can make me happy or sad or mad or anything else because we have emotions as human beings with each other. He is just there. I'm not diminishing him in any which way or shape. I'm just saying is that it's not an emotional thing as much as me sitting here going, he has offered me life extension. Can we keep it that simple? Maybe you don't want life extension. Live life, eat, drink, and be merry because tomorrow we die. You can have that. He's not, he's giving you that choice. But some of you may want life extension. In other words, an opportunity at forever. Some of you are not really excited about that because you're like, well, what would we do? Well, it says that no mind has even been able to conceive of how great the stuff is that we can do and what will be doable back, when we get to that place. Okay? Because you're trying to think of it as a fleshly human being. So you can't imagine. But I know he's put me here to demonstrate worthiness for forever. Please keep that in mind. You are here not to have an emotional thing, oh, me and whatever, we're so close, whether it's Messiah or the Father. No, it's not about that. He wants to know, are you going to trust and obey and be worthy of forever? As I see changes in my life, I start to appreciate him more and more. And that love really builds because I see the results, right? But it's not an emotion-driven, it's a performance-driven. Performance by him. I mean, we all have experienced things he's done in our lives. Little interventions here and there. And I respond emotionally to that. But I'm not chasing an emotion. That's the flesh. Okay? And you can be enslaved to that. I want to help set you free from that. So again, I'm not picking on emotion. It should come out of and manifest out of something that happened as a result. When we talk about in chapter 26, in a minute here of Leviticus, and then Deuteronomy 28, we're going to talk about blessings. I'm sure those would be emotional things that, oh my gosh, everything's just going so great, and there's no enemies killing us, and we're just having everything fruitful, and we're having our babies without a problem, and our crops are great, and the animals are great, and everything's. That should bring joy, happiness, right? Then there's the cursings, which brings all kinds of misery, which are all by choice, our choice. That's what he's letting us know. We have a choice, okay? So, to serve by choice, what you need to understand takes discipline. Discipline means you're doing it by choice, not by motivation, emotion, okay? We're not stirring up an emotion. Every motivational, whatever, teacher that I listen to, we go back 20 or 30 years, used to talk about motivation in terms of being passionate and emotional about stuff. That has shifted. All of them talk about discipline now. They've all realized that the reason it never works for people is that it's hard to constantly generate emotion. Emotion is the want to. Because you have to do when you don't want to. You have to not do when you shouldn't do, even though you want to. Okay? So if you want to be in the kingdom, you have to have discipline. You're going to have discipline. It takes discipline to show up, meaning whatever it is that he's expecting of you, you show up. I don't mean like show up like just be here. I mean, you show up when it comes to how you handle your food, anything that's Torah. All right? You show up in the right mindset to perform because you've chosen to obey and trust. Okay? You don't get to hear, well done, good and trustworthy servant, if you didn't perform good and trustworthy things. And you did them, right? Well done. I know Christianity hates this idea, and they're all going to probably rip me all over the place because they don't want it to be performative. But listen to how he words this stuff, okay? Listen to how he words this stuff, all right? And by the way, he said, if you do these things, then, right? It's if then you'll be my people. Then I will take you. Interesting. Watch what happens when we get to Leviticus 26. Let's go there now. And this was in the Torah portion last night. Of course, if somebody's watching this 6 months from now, it won't be the Torah portion last night, but okay. The Torah portion that, the last two portions for the book of Leviticus, right? Behar and Bechukotai, all right? Now, Leviticus 26, okay? Now, starting in verse 3, okay, he says, if you walk in my laws and guard my commands and shall do them. Next verse, then, okay? This is what he's letting people know. He says, I've offered you this. This is how it works. If you, then I. Okay? As parents, we do this to the child. If you clean your room in the next hour or two, then I will take you out for ice cream or whatever, right? If you, then I. There's also parents that say, and if you don't, then we're going to have a problem. I might take away your toys or do some other whatever, right? There's this performative aspect in parenting that you do because you know it's to the child's benefit, but they don't have the I want to built in yet. And so they don't want to, so you have to tell them, well, if that's okay, you don't have to want to, and if you don't, then you understand this is what happens, okay? Now, so in verse 3, he says, if you walk in my laws, guard my commands, and do them, then I shall give you rain in its season, and the land shall yield its fruit and its crops, and the trees its fruit. Your threshing shall last till the time of the grape harvest till the time of the sowing. You'll eat of the bread until you have enough, and shall dwell in your land safely. I shall give you peace in the land, and you shall lie down, and no one make you afraid. I shall clear the land of evil beasts, and not let the sword go through your land. You shall pursue your enemies, and they shall fall by the sword before you. 5 of you shall pursue 100, 100 of you shall pursue 10,000, and your enemies shall fall by the sword before you. And I shall turn to you and make you bear fruit, and shall increase you, and shall establish my covenant with you. The establishing of the covenant with them is not we did this at Sinai, so everything's good. It's if you continue in these things, then we will continue in my part of it. Okay? Now, so as we're going down here, it says, right, I'll turn to you and make you bear fruit, increase you, and shall establish my covenant with you. And you shall eat of the old supply and clear out the old because of the new. I shall set my dwelling place in your midst, and my being shall not reject you. And I shall walk in your midst, and shall be your Elohim, and you shall be my people. Okay, there's the same thing that was said in Exodus, right? The section we're in now is that I shall take you as my people. If, way back in verse 3, leads down to verse 12, I will take you as my people. If, right? However, we got a problem in verse 14. But if you do not obey me, and do not do all the commands. By the way, do we all hear the word all in there? You know, one day, I don't remember when it was, good years back, you always like to look up to make sure translations are right and what does the Hebrew say. You know what all means here? It actually means all. I looked it up. It's actually all of them. Okay? So it's not like if you do some of them. He says you do all of them. Okay? So he says, if you do not obey me and do not do all these commands, now he's going to explain why that may be. And if you reject my laws, so maybe you don't like one of his laws, you just reject it and decide, I'm not doing that one. Okay? I'm just not going to do that one. He says, or if, maybe you're not rejecting, but maybe your being is loathing some of my right rulings, so that you don't do all the commands, but break the covenant. Not doing all the commands is a breach of covenant. He says it right there. Okay? It's a breach of covenant. Now, look at what he says here. You could reject or you could loathe. Loathing, we talked about this last night. I'll redo it here for those who didn't hear it last night. Okay, so loathing, the commands, means that you, over time, have gotten irritated by, frustrated with, because it got in your way or some other reason you don't like that you have to do something, that over time you start to really resent that he's asking you to not do something or to do something. It becomes an issue where you're like, ugh, I really want to do this, or I really don't like doing that, and he's making me do that. Nobody's making you do anything. It's your choice. He says, if you do this stuff, all this good stuff happens. If you don't, then this other stuff happens. That's your choice. Okay? He lays it out for you. He's just letting you know how things work. Now, so if you reject or loathe because you have issues with his instruction, then you might not do everything, and if you don't do everything, you break the covenant. He says, I will also do this to you. Now, he already listed a bunch of blessings he's going to do, right? He says, I'm going to point sudden alarm over you, wasting disease and inflammation, destroying the eyes, consuming the life, and you shall sow your seed in vain, and your enemies shall eat it. Uh-oh. So he says, I shall appoint sudden alarm. That means that things are all of a sudden going to fall apart. You might panic. You may freak out. You not understand why things are all of a sudden not working right. It was really funny. There was a lady years ago, came to the congregation, and I knew certain things she had done and that she wasn't doing right, and then she would type into Facebook. I love how everybody always has to put all their life out there on Facebook. I don't understand why Yahweh seems to be, why all the stuff seems to be going wrong in my life. It's because you're not listening. I know some of the things that you're doing because you talk to me and you're counseling and everything. And why are you surprised when things are not working right when you're not doing what's right? See, that's the thing that he sits there going, seriously? He looks at you like, seriously? You're doing the dumb stuff you're doing. Things are getting the result that I told you would happen, and you don't figure out that that's why it's happening. Well, I just don't understand why things don't seem to go right, because you're not listening. You're not trusting and obeying and doing. You're not listening. He told you don't do this, and you're doing it. He told you do this, and you refuse to do it. And then you wonder why things aren't working right. Now, I'm not saying time and chance don't also play in, but I'm saying there are sometimes aspects of he's trying to get your attention. You're not listening. He has curses here to get your attention, right? Now, he says, destroying the eyes, consuming the life. In other words, the stuff that you have your eyes on, he's going to consume. The stuff that is pleasing to your eyes, he might consume. I didn't say it that way last night, okay? He's going to put sudden alarm on you. Maybe all of a sudden now you're going to have anxiety attacks, panic attacks. Wonder that everything's just going to blow up in your face. See, we should have peace as his people and not worry about stuff. Stuff might go wrong, but it'll get turned around at some point. It'll be okay. See, but when you don't have that peace, this kind of stuff is going to happen. Wasting disease. What is wasting disease? It sounds like wasting disease would be like, you start to lose all your vitality. So it's saying all the stuff that you think is going on that's so great is going to slowly waste away, start to disappear. And I'm going to destroy the eyes, meaning all these things that you see in your eyes is all right, is not right. That stuff's going to go bye-bye, all right? He says, and you shall sow your seed in vain. You're going to do what you think is so smart and so right. When you're wrong, you're going to realize it's in vain. You're going to be doing the futility of your mind like the Gentiles. This is what we hear in Leviticus, and Paul's saying the same thing when he talks about stop walking in futility. When you're doing this, you're not obeying, you're not trusting, it's futile. It's in vain. And then he says, and I shall set my face against you. So he doesn't say it exactly that way in the positive side, but in the positive side, he's basically saying, I will set my face for you. I'm going to make sure that these blessings come upon you. But now he says, I'm going to set my face against you. And I guess you could even talk about it from the idea of, I'm going to be watching and taking care of you versus I'm going to turn my back on you and you're on your own. Okay? I'm going to turn my back on you. Sorry, on your own now. You're not going to, I'm only with you when you're with me. Okay? You don't want to be with me? It's okay. I can turn my back and work with the ones that do want to be with me. Now, of course, you could always change your mind, turn around, make teshuvah, repent, and then he'll pay attention again. This is, by the way, James 4, right? Humble yourself, okay? Draw near to him, and he will then draw near to you. So he's saying, look, when you screw this up, you better humble yourself, draw near to him, and then he'll draw near to you. Your child's throwing a fit, you turn your back, you walk away. The child finally figures it out and says, Mom, I'm sorry, Dad, I'm sorry, whatever, I won't do that anymore, whatever. Then you turn back around. Oh, you're done now? You finished throwing your fit? You finished being all fleshly and stupid? All right. Now we can talk, if you're ready to listen. Now, he says, and I shall set my face against you, etc. And then he goes into the opposite, right? He says, and those who hate you shall rule over you, and you shall flee when no one pursues you. And after all this, now he's going to go into, if you don't get it, more cursings. If you don't get it, more cursings. If you don't get it, more cursings. By the way, let's go back to the problem. Flesh versus spirit. When you're walking in spirit, the truth, what Yah has it for you, that's his mind, blessings. What's happening here? Why are the curses all coming in the end of this, the middle of this chapter here? Because people have shifted to flesh. It's flesh that rejects the laws that have come from above. Flesh that loathes what he does because I don't like it. It's inconvenient. It's not going to be, it doesn't work for me. I don't want to do that. Okay? Why can't I have my whatever it is that your way on whatever it is? And so you want to justify and make sure you get what you want. You should be trusting that as long as you give him what he wants, you will get more than you could ever imagine you might want. Abundance to overflowing. But we want what we want now. We're still thinking through the flesh. Okay? So I just want you to hear as we're reading through this is the result of flesh ruling. Okay? Ruling in you is the flesh is ruling. The result of the blessings was when Spirit was ruling. And I'm not saying that those are outside things. Both of those are in you. Okay? You allowing his mind, Spirit, to guide and lead, blessing. You allowing your flesh mind to guide and lead, cursing. Okay? Stop thinking about this battle being somehow inside versus outside. All of this is happening in you. That's what Paul teaches us. He says, you're having this battle in you. This is happening inside of you. All right, now, that's why he tells you to let the mind be in you. Let that mind, the mind of Messiah, be in you. Stop blocking it and getting in the way. What blocks it? The mind of the flesh. Okay? So then he goes, after all this, if you don't obey me, I'm going to punish you 7 times more. And then he goes into more things that'll go bad. And then in verse 21, if you walk contrary to me and refuse to obey, in other words, now you're being really stubborn. He keeps smacking you, but you still don't want to listen. We have children like that. It doesn't matter what you do to them. They just still don't want to listen. Okay? He says then there'll be more things that go sideways on you. Then we get to verse 23. He says, and if you're not instructed by me, by these. So all of these things are meant to be, again, when I said this at the beginning of the teaching, right? He's going to provide a path, a way that leads to the things that you want to have. And so they're instructional, okay? When we talked about, he will show us, right, I'll take you as my people, he will show us the path, requirements, and expectations to be his people. And for us to demonstrate we have submitted to him and chosen him to be our Elohim. And so these are to instruct us to say, see what happens in the blessing. See what happens when you trust me and I'm your Elohim? Then you go and let flesh be your Elohim. You. Okay? Or some other outside authority that's not him. See the results you get with that. It's a very clear and stark contrast. It should be pretty clear and obvious that there's a problem here, that there's a difference here, right? Okay. So continuing. So he said, and if you're not instructed by me, so he's saying, I'm doing these things instructionally. Well, then we're going to have more problems. I'm going to now have to walk contrary to you. I'm going to more actively be involved in kind of getting your attention. That's pretty rough, okay? That's pretty rough. And then we're going now into verse 33. Let's just scroll down to 33. So ultimately, remember, this is in the section of, I will take you as my people. Well, you know what? If you choose not to do these things, he said, then I will scatter you among the Gentiles and draw the sword after you. So it's not once saved, or once covenanted, always covenanted. If you do not perform your side of the bargain, he will make an effort to get your attention. Okay, it's not like one strike, you're out. He's going to try to get your attention. He said, but at some point, I'm just going to have to kick you out. You're not listening, I'm just going to kick you out. By the way, some of you have children in your house that need to be kicked out. They don't listen. They don't perform. They don't contribute to the house. They are full-grown adults. Why are they there? Well, blah, blah, blah. Don't give me blah, blah, blah. Because you know what the number one excuse is? Well, they couldn't take care of themselves. Why is that your fault or problem? Well, maybe it is your fault. Maybe you didn't raise them right. I don't know. But why is that your problem? They're adults. They can figure it out. They need to figure it out. But you're coddling and codependenting the problem. They need to go. I don't mean the first time you have a little hiccup, but you know what? If they're 28, 35 or something like that, why are they still in your house? Unless they're handicapped and need to be taken care of in some way. And stupid is not a handicap. Neither is stubborn. These are common maladies. Okay? I mean legitimately handicapped. You need to kick the baby bird out of the nest, especially when the baby bird is older than you ever were, when you were out of your nest. Anyway, so he says, again, let's listen now to the wording here, right? So when we started in chapter 26, the blessings were conditionally based on if you, and the idea of you serving spirit and not flesh, okay? Then we got to the cursings in verses 14 to 39, and they were conditionally based on if you, serving flesh and not spirit. Okay, so they're both conditionally based. Nothing has changed. See, everybody's going to sit going, yeah, that's why Messiah had to come and take away all that hard stuff. What makes you so special that they had to do the hard stuff and you don't? I thought he wasn't a respecter of persons. Well, that was for them. Then God realized it was too hard for people. So I want to understand this. You're the creator of the universe. You have decided, for whatever reason, you want to live forever with some people, certain types of people, based on their choices, not their race or color or this or that or whatever other physical thing, but their choices. Why would you ever lower the bar? Okay? Because that's what Christianity claims, that God realized the bar was way too high, the Torah was way too hard, so he lowered the bar. Now it's really simple. Just believe that the sun exists. Okay? That's the level of lowering the bar. All right? Okay? Now, and so we really need to think of this stuff in a much more logical way. Okay? If you were having a challenge in whatever it was that you wanted things to be a certain way, why would you lower the bar? Especially when we're talking about relationships, okay? Like, if I want a relationship with you, and I expect that a good relationship with you means this, and this, whatever, and knowing that if I lower that, I won't be quite as satisfied or happy with the relationship or fulfilled in the relationship, lowering the bar, some of you got married because you lowered the bar, okay? And now you don't know why you're married and you're having your struggles because you just wanted to be married, so you lowered the bar. Or you never even bothered to set up a bar. Instead, you were sitting at the bar and met each other with beer goggles. But some of you never set any kind of an expectation of criteria for the person you're going to live with and marry. So you don't have any measuring stick expectation until after you get married. Now all of a sudden you have a whole bunch of them and the person doesn't meet them. And now you're frustrated because you set the expectations after the fact. See, do you notice that the creator of the universe shows us the right way to do things by setting the expectations before? Right? Before the metaphorical wedding at Sinai, he sets the expectations. If you will do this, I will do that. That's the expectations. And lays out in great detail some of the things that they can expect. And lays in great details what he expects from them. It's called the Torah commands, right? But we don't do that kind of stuff with people, you know. We don't set out those kind of expectations. Even though I tell you to do that exercise, a lot of you still don't do that, you know, as far as premarital stuff. And by the way, you can do that after you get married and kind of reset things so that your expectations align with each other properly, right? All right, so I want us to understand, because we're going to go to Deuteronomy 28, and we're going to continue looking at blessings and cursings in the next part, okay? So that we can see similarly the things that are mentioned and how they're played out in Deuteronomy 28. So we're kind of leading into that. We're finishing here, Leviticus 26. All right, but I just want us to understand and really embrace that. I'm going to go back to the first page of my notes here, okay? That when we deal with slavery, performance by choice versus performance under duress. When you go to your job, it's performance under duress, unless you love your job. See, that's why a lot of people get to 30, 40 years at a job and they become just miserable, bitter people by the time, they come home from work every day because they hate what they're doing. And they hate the people they work for, and they're just under duress. Okay? I like the idea of working for myself. I don't have a boss that has me under duress. I choose to work as much as I choose to work. I choose to do things to submit. Now, my boss chose me knowing that this was in line with what I do. He knew it was congruent with my being. And that's what you kind of really want to find in life, is something that is congruent with who you are. So that you're not doing it just because there are lots of things you could do that don't pay very well, that you might love to do. What you need to do is find a way to either do something that pays well that you don't really like very much, but it serves that purpose, and find other ways to do the things you really do love, or figure out a way to do something you love and actually get paid well. Okay, one of the two, And that would be what I would encourage and recommend to do. I mean, if the thing you love to do doesn't pay very well, do it on the side. Do it as your side thing. But figure out a way to make a living so you don't have the duress of having to pay your bills and stress over your being able to take care of yourself as you get older and all those other things. But just remember that performance is everything. You are here to do. And he's watching how you choose and what you choose. How you choose, what you're going to do, and then what you do. Okay? And then he watches how you do it. You do it with all your strength, with all your might, with all your being? Do you do it kind of lackadaisical and half, you know what? Do you just kind of put in a half job? How do you do it? Do you show up on time? I mean, that's almost like a lost art, is that people actually even showing up on time. There's not enough people in this younger generation getting fired when they don't show up. You know why? Because it's hard to find people to do the jobs. So the bosses allow them to get away with stuff because they can't easily replace them. I would fire them anyway. Okay? And if that means I have to shut the business down at some point, so be it, but I'll figure something else out. But I'm not going to continue to be a part of the problem. Okay? Growing up for me, jobs I had, you didn't show up and you didn't call first that you weren't going to show up, that was fired. They would say, we just assumed you quit. Well, no, I didn't quit. I just forgot to call. No, you're supposed to call. Okay? No show, no call, fired. Nowadays, it happens all the time, especially at the lower skill set, lower pay type of jobs. People just show up or don't show up for whatever, and they don't call or do whatever, and they get away with it. I just can't even fathom that. When I was growing up, that was never going to be the case. Okay? You were late, you got written up. You were late more than whatever number of times, you were thrown out. I mean, there was no games being played. You were replaceable. Okay? You were replaceable. And so, but it's a mindset. So he watches us when you go to work. He watches you. When you're at home with your family, he watches you. When you're by yourself, he watches you. He wants to see the choices you make. What decisions are you making? Making decisions is the reason you're here, right? We talk about that in the one teaching. By the way, you should listen to that teaching at least several times a year, okay? Once a month. It's one part. Just to remind you of the point that you're here to make choices. And that is the whole point of being here. And his sitting there watching going, let me see what you're doing. All right. Why'd you choose to do that? Okay, that was your process. That's what you were thinking. Okay. I mean, he's learning about us. Oh, but he knows everything. But he wants to watch us do everything. and he's watching how you choose. If I'm going to, if I'm dating you, I'm single and I'm dating you, I'm paying attention to how you interact with me, how you interact with other people. I've had ladies tell me, I thought I liked this guy. Then we went out to dinner, and he treated the waitress or the waiter like horribly, and he was this, what, or that. So you're watching how people react. Or, he was great in the way he handled that. This thing went sideways, but he handled that great, Or she reacted this way, and I was watching her and what she did. We should be watching people. One of the reasons my wife married me is she liked the way I interacted with her 75 nieces and nephews. It seemed like that many at the time. Because when I first met her, they all had come to visit her in Florida, and I got to spend time with the children, and she wanted to have a bunch of children, and so we ended up with 2, but she wanted to have a bunch of children, and she wanted to make sure that the guy did well with children, and the nieces and nephews loved me, okay? So, but she was watching that, and she will tell you that was one of the key moments that had her start thinking about, I could be the one. So we do this as human beings. We watch and pay attention to other people, especially when we're considering the level of relationship we may have with them, because they may do something that says, okay, you're going to stay at this level and not any further because there's some things I'm a little concerned about, but at this level, we're good. And other people, you may say, you know what, I'm really comfortable going to a higher level than that or a higher level than that because you've shown me that I can trust you. You've shown me that we have aligned in a lot of ways, in different ways, in different things. He's doing the same thing. He is watching us to see how aligned you are with him. Not to see how much he's aligned with you. He is what he is. He wants to see if you are aligned with him. And he wants to see how much of your choices are filtered through your thoughts about what he would think about it. Do you actually think about that? I wonder what he would think about this, because you know what he's said in the Word. Or if you'd call for counsel to say, you know what, I'm not sure how he thinks about this thing that I was about to make a choice about, so I thought I'd counsel to find out if you have an insight as to what his thoughts are on this particular choice I was about to make. Whatever that choice may be. Now, it's not about what color car you buy, okay, or even what kind of car you buy, although that's not true. I mean, if you need something that's reliable, dependable, and affordable, and you're looking at something that's more unreliable, more expensive, and just flashy, well, then that may not be showing him that you know how to make good choices, okay? But, I mean, if you're looking at 3 different models of something very similar by 3 different manufacturers, so he doesn't care, okay? They're all pretty much in the same category. But he's watching the relationships you choose, how you choose them, the careers you choose, and how you do at them, And by careers, I mean, he wants to see, are you picking things that challenge you and utilize your skill sets and grow you and whatever it is that. Also, do you choose things that can actually do the job of taking care of you? Because the job, really, the main point of the job is to pay your bills. So are you getting something career-wise that actually pays your bills? I ask people all the time who are struggling financially, what do you do? They tell me what to do. I say, why are you doing that? Well, I say, how long have you been doing that? I've been doing it 15 years. So in 15 years, you hadn't figured out that this wasn't going to work? Why is it taking you 15 years to realize this isn't going to work? You should already know kind of where whatever you're doing tops out pay-wise and where you're likely to end up pay-wise down the road. All right? If you know you're going to need to be making, let's say, $60,000 to $70,000 or $80,000 a year at a certain point in your life, and the job you have doesn't pay more than $40,000 at any point, well, that's not going to work. Okay? Guys, if you think you're going to be married making $20 an hour, $40,000 a year, and think you're going to take care of a wife and kids on that, you are sadly wrong. Okay? You are sadly wrong. Now, that isn't bad as a starting job just to kind of get you going. But you got to be planning on, I use this as a model. Maybe I need to up it, but I started, you should be looking at something that pays at least at some point your age per hour. So that by the time you're 50, you're making $100,000, not still making $50,000, but it pays $50 an hour, which is $100 a year. Just double the hour, and that kind of is what your annual is, give or take a few dollars, all right? I'm not saying go get the job and tell the boss, well, I need to get paid my age per hour. No, you find a career that pays you your age per hour. So you could be making $50,000, $60,000 a year at the point where you need to be making some money to really plan for your retirement and everything. Because the $20 an hour thing isn't going to cut it when you're 50. It's not going to cut it even now anymore. I might have to make that like your age plus 10 per hour or something, Because it's just gotten more and more expensive to live. At least here in the U.S. I'm just using the U.S. But he's watching you make these choices is the point, right? What wisdom are you showing? Are you thinking, this is important. I didn't say this before, so I want you to really listen now. He wants to offer you what? Forever, right? Anybody realize that forever is a long time? So if thinking about the future is important in a finite 70 to 100 years, how much do you think it's important in a forever? Whenever he created this whole universe thing, and you could argue 6,000 years to millions and billions or whatever years, whatever, he still had to think ahead and know what his plan was for this thing that he started. And if you can't even plan ahead in this very finite little short nothing of a life of 60, 70, 80, 100 years, how is he thinking that you're going to be able to think ahead when he gives you forever? Have you ever even thought of that? But you're so busy in the now, you're not thinking about like next week, next year, or 10 years from now. But you know what's going to happen? One day you're going to wake up and you're 60-something years old. You're like, oh my gosh, how'd that happen? I thought I had more time to get these things ready, and now I'm broke, and I'm getting Social Security, and I'm getting $2,000 a month, and that's all I can live on, and that's it. And your body's falling apart, so you can't do the hard, especially if you had a physically demanding job that you knew you weren't going to be able to do forever. Well, when were you planning to, train out into something that didn't, do you understand what I'm saying? I got a lot of construction guys. They did really good when they were in shape and, able to handle a lot of that stuff. And then one day they realized my knees are not the same, my hips are not the same, my back's a little out of whack, I've fallen off a ladder too many times, or a roof. I mean, people fall off of stuff. And yet they weren't thinking about, well, how am I going to make a living when that's going on? Because nobody's going to want to have a broken down, beat up person do this kind of work when they can't do it. You got to think ahead, okay? The biggest thing you need to think ahead to is the kingdom. And he's evaluating you, okay? I know that people talk about like the judgment throne. Forget about all that from the point of view of how you always thought about it. He's going to judge you whether or not you were sinning or this. No, forget all that. That's a part of it. You know what he's going to be judging? He's going to be evaluating whether or not you're worthy of spending forever with. And if you were a sinner or was sinning and did things and didn't repent of it, that'll come into part of that decision. If you wasted a lot of your talents and gifts and opportunities, that's going to come into it, I believe. If you did not learn from lessons that he allowed you to go through, that's going to go. Do you understand what I'm saying? He's going to be evaluating everything you've done, every choice you've made to decide whether or not you are worthy of spending forever with. This is not Christianity where everybody just gets in because somehow he's doing this for us. It's all about him. I don't know why he wants or needs or desires all kinds of people to live forever with him, but apparently he does. And he's deciding who. And it's not just because you've decided Yeshua is the Messiah that gets you in. Of course, if you didn't decide that, you're not going to make the other decisions either, so then it's a part of it, right? Because you believe him to be is why you do a lot of things you do. But I need you to really fully embrace the reality that you are being evaluated, okay? I get a big sense of this. My daughter is going into her senior year. She's being evaluated for different companies. She's going to be in accounting and the CPA work and whatever. And they have her come in and do different things where they bring in a bunch of students to evaluate them for their company. And they interview them and spend time with them to see, are you a good fit for our company? Okay? And she's evaluating them. So to think about the amount of evaluating going into her just to be hired for a job, why would you think that the Father is not evaluating you for the forever? Okay? And it's not just, did you keep Shabbat? How did you treat people? How did you make decisions? How did you handle your emotions? Where was the flesh balance between the flesh and spirit, and that you understood how to keep the flesh in check because you were trying to walk in spirit? Not Christianity's version, what I taught you, okay? His nature, his mindset. I'm going to walk in that and not my flesh mindset. Remember the two battling inside. He is evaluating this stuff. Look, I don't know what kind of feelings you guys came here to get. I don't know how excited people are. I'm just here to give you the red pill. I'm here to give you the truth and let you know this is what I believe is why you're here and what you're going through in this life. Okay? And it's about him evaluating you for forever. That you are in an interview. It's an 80 to 90 year whatever interview, but it's an interview. Okay? You know, like when they put you on a trial basis at a job or this, hey, we're going to give you a 6-month trial, whatever. You're on an 80, 90, 100-year trial basis here. You got this fleshly life. I got nothing to lose as the creator because you don't want to do what I want you to do and you don't want to be whatever. You're just going to die. It won't be a problem. Okay, no harm, no foul. You had your life and you decided whatever to do with it. However, some of you may choose life extension. I don't think I've ever worded it that way before, but I like it. Some of you may want to extend to the forever. And he's evaluating you for that. Take that seriously, And it's more than just commandment keeping. It's how you keep them, how you make your choices. Because you could loathe and still keep. You could be like, I hate doing this thing, but you do it. But your attitude's all terrible. Anybody have people in your life that you kind of keep at a distance because their attitude's terrible? Who really would like to have a relationship with you, but you're like, no. Do you think he's any less smart than you are to kind of have that kind of idea that your attitude stinks? I'm not going to want to spend forever with you. Okay? We're being evaluated. All right? This is what your existence is all about. So please take that seriously. All right, let's go before the Father. Father, we come before you, and Father, we appreciate the insight that you give us to understand why we're here and what you're doing and what your expectations is for what we're doing and what you expect us to do or not do, and that we can understand the point. There is a point to all this. The point is life extension or a choice just to go into the sweet good night, so to speak, okay? And so, Father, we appreciate that you give us guidance on how to have and be found worthy. So, Father, we thank you for the teaching, for the words, for the writings that you inspired to be given to us in this book so that we can take this and use it. Thank you. Personally, I thank you for any insight that I was able to give that was in line with your intention here. And please, anything that was not in your intention, that people should just ignore all of that. But that, Father, we appreciate the opportunity to take this information then, and my prayer is that we would take it and run with it, that we would take it and incorporate it into every moment from this moment forward. So we take this much more seriously and appreciate much more the opportunity that you have given us by opening up our minds to the opportunity, to know that there's an opportunity, and that we should not squander it. So, Father, we thank you, we praise you, for all these things, in the name above all names, Yeshua our Messiah. Amen. Amen. Amen.